Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Siri Chung Khalsa, your joyful, plant-based foodie and physician, and I'm super looking forward to sharing with you some of the treats that we have today. So we're coming into the holiday season, and there's lots of things to kind of exhale and take pause with right now. One of which is, like, what are all the holiday celebrations going to look like? How are we going to connect with each other? But one thing we can do is send out and give each other little food treats, food boxes, things like that. So if you're joining in live today, I'm going to be talking about making chocolate bark, which is very exciting, as well as kale chips, which for some people may not be as exciting. However, when you learn how inexpensive it is to make them on your own, you're going to be like, sweet. So if you're just joining in, just put a hashtag live. Tell me where you're joining from. I'll be able to see the comments today and see who's joining. Throw some hearts out there. Share this with a friend, somebody you think might be interested. And because the kale chips are going to be baking, we're going to do those first. So what I wanted to just sort of show you was, and everybody can hear me okay. That would be awesome. You can just say, yes. Oops, sorry about that. Every week I do that. Literally every week. I thought I had the volume down. At any rate, so we're going to do kale chips first. And I've got a nice sort of leafy version of kale that I'm going to be using here. And what we're going to do is, you can see I've already rinsed the kale and I've got it broken up into some little pieces. And oftentimes, I don't keep the stems on. I find they don't dehydrate so good, so you can save those for things like soup stock and things like that. So if you're just joining in, we're starting off with kale chips. Oh my gosh. And let me just point out, okay, so for the record, this volume here, which I think we can do an overhead view, we have about $1.50 of kale. And this is going to be way more than one of those small 4-ounce packages, which you pay maybe $6 or $7 for. So this is a really fun thing. Again, you can get young folks in the kitchen. You can have the elderly people who want to help out in the kitchen too. This is definitely one where I like to say you get to play with your food this week. So let's talk a little bit about how to flavor and season the kale. When I first got introduced to sort of, you might say, raw vegan eating, it was a way where food wouldn't be heated above 115 degrees. And this was how I was first introduced to kale chips. And as I've been teaching through the years in lots of different environments and different people, I found that not everybody had a dehydrator. They're awkward. They often find their way into the kitchen in very strange places. And so I think we got a big hand visiting us today. I think we're good now. Okay, so at any rate, always thanks to my awesome husband, who is a little bit behind the scenes here with us as we've figured out all these tech pieces. And Teddy is asleep on the sofa in a sunbeam listening to Kenny G. So it's all good here in our household. But at any rate, so you can dehydrate these, but you can also do them in the oven at anywhere from 275 to 350. You'll have to kind of learn your own oven. And in the Mediterranean climates, they will often, it's part of Ethiopian food, as I have learned as well, they do make a dish with dried kale. So they dry the kale out in the oven or in the sun, grind it down, and it's used as a sprinkle. And of course, kale is rich in magnesium, fiber, iron, calcium. So kale's kind of a friendly ally to us as we move into this winter season. So here we go. So I'm going to switch these guys out. So here we have the kale. I'm going to just set that over here for the moment. So again, for those of you that have sort of followed along, I have some kind of specific ways that I kind of enjoy doing things. And one of them is this olive oil lemon juice dressing. And this is something that is generally 2 parts oil, 1 part 2 parts oil, 1 part lemon. So this is about 2 tablespoons, and you can see here this lemon has a lot of seed in it, so I'm just going to catch those seeds out. And I just love this dressing. I put a little bit of salt, a little bit of Dijon, and voila, it can go on just about anything. So it's about a half teaspoon of Dijon and about a half teaspoon of salt. You can omit the salt. You, of course, can do kale chips without oil. You can do ground cashews. You can do ground hemp. So there are some different ways to do it. I kind of like to go heavy on this one, on the cumin and coriander. And again, you can see here my favorite little whisk. And I'm just going to make this, it's going to form a pretty thick base, but there's some water still left on the kale. So this is a way to kind of help spread that out. And then we're going to add some nutritional yeast, which is what really gives that sort of buttery flavor. And this size container you can get at Sprouts or Whole Foods for under 10 bucks. So this is something that if you're going plant-based, it really pays off to have a nice tall container of nutritional yeast. So you can see it's formed this kind of little slurry, which I'm loving the view today. My goodness, thanks, hun. It's all set up. So, alrighty, any rate. So we can see here, I'll just show you, there's two ways you could do this. I'm going to show you, I like to have a little bit bigger pan, but the sheet pan that I normally use, I'm going to use for the chocolate bark we're about to make. So this is the mixture. Let's do it this way. This is the mixture for the kale, and I'm just going to put it over the kale, just like that. It's actually pretty straightforward. And then comes the fun part, is you kind of massage it in, almost like you're making a salad. And if you were interested, you could stop here and make a salad with it. So I'm just gonna make sure this gets really well mixed in. And you could add some paprika, you could add some cayenne, you could add ginger. You can do all kinds of different flavor profiles from here. So I did really sort of a cumin coriander lemon, but you can do Chinese 5-spice, you can do ranch style with dill and onion. You can do a spicy one with like a chipotle pepper and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of flexibility. So you get a little sense here. And if you wanted to, you can do some cashew cream in this as well. This is when you soak and puree cashews. And so again, if you have any questions, just, gosh, pop them in the chat box. Kale chips are pretty easy to make and certainly one of the favorites in our home. So the next step is I like to make sure that it's kind of one layer deep. If it's more than that, they start to kind of cook and get a little soggy. So we're just going to do this one layer deep, and I'm going to throw this in the oven. Hopefully it'll be done by the time we're done. You got to keep a kind of eye on it. They can get dried out, but sometimes I'll go in a little bit way through and fluff them up a bit, if you will, but it just depends. In the dehydrator, you don't have to worry about them. You throw them in, 12 hours later, they're done. And we're doing the oven method, which is because a lot of people don't have a dehydrator at home, which I totally get. It makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm just going to rinse my hands here really quickly. And we're going to throw these guys in the oven. And then we're going to get on to this chocolate bark kind of business. So I'm going to mention a couple other fun Christmas or holiday treat bag options you can do while we're waiting for this all to kind of come together. We are in season here. Let me just scoot this out of the way. So we've made the kale chips. So if you wanted to make this really sweet little goodie box for people, friends or family, you've got a great option here. Right now in season, we have persimmons. Look at these gorgeous ladies. Oh my gosh. So you can dehydrate them or dry them out in the air or in the sun to make these beautiful medallions. Again, very colorful, beautiful kind of array of things. And I just love them. They're so fun. They're very tasty. So you can dehydrate fruit. Another thing you can do, this is really fun, is especially if you're here in Phoenix, you can visit the farmer's market at the Bethany Home in Central, and you can pick up some hibiscus from Emily. And hibiscus is a tea that dries out. It looks a bit like this, and Emily gave us to show you all how a beautiful arrangement, if you will. And she told us today that hibiscus has been a bumper crop this year. Now, there's something I wanted to point out to you all. I'm just wondering if you notice a particular, if you will, body part shape that seems to relate to this hibiscus as we're seeing it. And so one of the things I love about hibiscus is it's a great reminder of the qualities that nature can give us. So it has, this is the calyx, which is sort of the base of the flower, as I understand it. But boy, it sure looks a lot like a heart to me, for sure. This is what it looks like when it's dried. Almost looks like the chordae on a valve. And wouldn't you know it, that research has centered around the utility of hibiscus for cardiac conditions. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to hop into PubMed to learn more about it. And my husband, Amaratma, who is an acupuncturist, told me today that in Chinese medicine, flowering plants are used as teas to expand our consciousness, to flower our awareness. So I just thought that was so fascinating. And we have this Thanksgiving event coming up, and the tea that we're using in that is going to be a hibiscus tea. It's sort of our mocktail. It is really delicious. It has ginger, star anise, orange peel, and this wonderful hibiscus, which is in season. So I love to eat seasonally, and of course you can use the dried hibiscus, which is pretty easy to find if you didn't have it readily accessible to you. So let's take a look here, and oh boy, I think you can see this on the overhead cam. We've got chocolate that's just about been melted, and this is, of course, I think this is the super exciting part, is getting this chocolate business kind of rolling. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clear up a little space. So what I've done, and if you're just joining in, the temperature for the kale chips is 350, but you'll want to keep an eye on your oven. I saw a question for that. So it could be 275 to 350. Some ovens, if they're convection, you may need a little bit cooler, but you can just keep an eye on the kale chips. We put them in about 3 minutes ago. So we're kind of looking at maybe between 8 to 12 minutes, but I'm actually cooking them in our a little warming oven below our main oven. And the reason for that is that when I do the stove and the oven, it gets super hot in here, which I'm like, I'm hot. And so no easy answers as to how to set up our little test kitchen here, but I used these chocolate chips as the base for the chocolate bark. And you can find any sort of dark chocolate, vegan base, whatever chocolate chip bits that you particularly have an affinity to. These have no dairy in them, but they were processed in a facility that does process dairy if one was to have a milk allergy or feel very strongly about that. And they are non-GMO and a fair trade cocoa. So I do think it's always important to just keep in mind the sourcing, and there are some political issues around chocolate that I think definitely worth thinking about. So, so those chocolate chips I have here. So there's two ways that people do this. One way is in the microwave, and they just throw the chocolate chips in the microwave, and they check them I guess it's like every 5 to 10 seconds, but I'm a little bit of a, I don't know what the right word is. Is it purist maybe? But the chocolate is, let me just kind of show you here. So I have a double boiler, and I like to be kind of careful with the double boiler and my surface because water doesn't do so well with chocolate. So let me just scoot this over just a smidge and I'll show you. So the way this double boiler works is I have the stove was set at about medium. I didn't bring it to a full boil because it really just doesn't need that. We need to get the chocolate to a kind of molten phase, and the chips just melt, if you will. Now there are different ways to take, Teddy's saying hi today. He says, yes, Mom, chocolate's yummy. So anyway, but of course dogs can't have chocolate. So yeah, so I hope that answered the question. And if you're just joining in, what we're doing today is, if you're just joining in, if you're just joining in, what I'm doing is leaving the stove on and listening to Teddy bark. But at any rate, so what we've got is this molten chocolate chips. So really, this was a lot easier than I expected. And I always like to say, I was kind of today years old when I realized, like, oh my gosh, because chocolate bark actually is kind of expensive. And I just find chocolate sort of oddly therapeutic to play with. So it's kind of one of my new little favorite hobbies. So we have a surface here set up, which is a sill pad. And the sill pad is a silicone nonstick, but you could also use parchment paper. Chocolate's pretty forgiving in many ways. So what we're going to do, and want to be sure we can catch this wonderful view, we're going to bring this, I like to sort of, if you will, wipe off the bottom of the double pan. It can be a little hot, so be careful, because I don't like to drip any water onto the surface. So here we go, guys. Oh my gosh, here comes the chocolate. It's pretty magical. And what we're going to do, and this is just, if you're just joining, you can put some hearts in, tell me where you're joining from, you can say live. We're making some homemade gifts for everyone today. So if you have someone you love, maybe your child's back in school, you want to do something nice for the teacher. Again, in COVID time, you have to be careful about exposure, but if you feel confident that you can provide that to someone without risk for them, I think this is such a great gift. And for many years, I have been making gifts for people. So now you can see, oh my gosh, this is so fun. So playing with molten chocolate might be one of my new most favorite things. And really, we just used chocolate chips to do this, if you're just joining in now. So I'm just going to grab a little spatula here. So I like to use this sort of cake spatula. And what I'm going to do is just spread it. And you can see here, has this wonderful texture. And let me tell you, kids just love this. And the anti-inflammatory diet, which is part of the pyramid that's been set up by Andy Weil and the folks at the Center for Integrative Medicine, allows us to have dark chocolate. Now, one of the things that I love about the bark, and this is just a pure sort of experience of eating, if you will, is this idea that if the bark is a little bit thinner bite than, say, a chocolate bar, you can make it thinner. And somehow I like the texture of a bigger bite. It's the same amount, but it's sort of a mental thing for me. And the other thing that's fun is that you can just, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun here. So you can see we're just creating a surface. It's almost like if you've ever put tile on the floor, or there's so many different ways these kind of patterns can emerge for us. But then the fun part is coming now. So it's like, okay, how am I going to decorate this? And if you had a square pan that you put some parchment down, you could do this in a circle. So we're going to do a little bit of a mandala, and then we'll let the bark fall where it may in terms of how it cracks. So again, you can see here, we've got this beautiful sort of texture. And now I'm going to just sort of share with you some different ideas for decorating it. And I might just kind of do it in different regions so you can get a sense of it. I am going to clear just a tiny space here for myself and bring some things over now that you've had a chance to see them. So I'm not sure you guys have seen my dried flower. Oh, goodness. Can you guys still hear me? One thing after another. I think the sound is still all right. Sorry about that. I just hit the speaker. Okay, so here we have some dried flower powders, which I'm not sure I'm going to use on these, but I also have something that is so fun, is we have some dried edible flowers. So just so you can get a little bit look at what we've got here. And flowers will bring a little bit of a bitter flavor, but gosh, they're so pretty. So I'm going to play with that. I'm going to use some coconut and maybe even a little bit of almonds. So let's get started. In the meantime, kind of while I'm working on this, I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. If you're like me and you occasionally would make gifts for people for the holiday season, So tell me what you would make. I love to hear the creativity from people. So, oh good, so I'm glad you can still hear okay. Any rate, so let's get started. So I think I'm gonna do some almonds on the outer portion. I have no idea where I'm going with this. And maybe you've seen sand paintings and mandala paintings. You can just sort of approach this in a really therapeutic kind of creative way. So I love to sort of let there be some freedom in the kitchen. It doesn't always have to be figured out or perfect. So I'm just doing some, and of course we're going to break this into lots of little pieces when we're done. And so there'll be that element that will come across. Just get this out of the way here. So we're going to do, I think I'm going to do a little bit of coconut next. To be careful. Usually when I deal with chocolate, it's pretty much all over me. Like if you guys could see me the week prior to this, I had a big chocolate smile, unbeknownst to me. So at any rate. So now I'm doing a little bit of coconut. And of course, when you do this at home, and if you do it, please definitely get back to me. So show me a picture, show me what's doing. And you can see here, the chocolate does start to firm up, but we've still got time. You can see I can still put my finger in just like that. Yummy. So we can just sort of press everything in as we're going. I'd say you've got about, well, in Phoenix, you probably have a little more time than other climates because it's so darn hot here. But let's see here. I think I'm going to do some Calendula Petals next. So you can see here, this is just so fun. I'm really totally enjoying myself. I don't know, sort of one thing after another. So hopefully you can hear me now. And let's get this, just say if you can hear me. I appreciate everyone's patience. Anyway, so let's take a look here. I'm just going to be putting some of this rose petal here in the middle. And even if you had, you should be able to hear it here in a second, guys. Sorry about that. But you can just watch for the moment here. Let's get this all situated. We've got some beautiful rose here. Okay, yay, you can hear me. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate it. So, we have like a mini studio here. So inevitably, I don't know, we don't have double mini studio. And they say for sound, sometimes it's helpful to have redundancy. So fortunately, we've got a little bit of a backup. So you can see here, I am putting in a little bit of rose in the middle, and I'm not sure it's coming across fully on the overhead, but there's this beautiful contrast of the chocolate and the flowers. And you could put anything you wanted into the chocolate itself. So if you wanted to put cinnamon, you wanted to put cardamom, there's all kinds of different things that will help with that. So let's just do a couple more pieces of the rose petal here. And if you can't hear me, then we can just watch. So I also have we also have a little bit of edible gold, which you can do. You can sprinkle that in. You can get that at bake supply stores. It's kind of hard to handle, but what the heck? I've got a little piece or two here. Let's see. So again, a lot of times you can use tweezers, but I like to just kind of throw it on there. It's like a little work of art here. So a little bit of gold, and dropped it. So you can see here, this would be such a fun gift. I know I would love to get this. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear me now. Not totally sure, may not be quite as high caliber. I am going to put a little bit of lavender, and lavender sounds kind of yummy here as well. And I have some orange peels that I've dehydrated. So let's take a look here. So we're nearing to done here on this beautiful chocolate mandala. And so the dried flowers I grow myself, as well as I get from my friends that are gardeners. And I also get them from vendors, like, what is it? I'll put it in the chat box. There's a really great source. It's in Oregon. I don't know, the name is escaping me at the moment. What's that herbal vendor?
Mountain Rose?
Mountain Rose, yeah. Mountain Rose is a great option. So I'm putting some orange peel on here now. And again, you can see there's so much creativity that you can utilize in this. And we just got this dried orange peel. And then you can kind of pat it down into the chocolate a little bit, just to be sure it doesn't fall off as it's drying. A couple pieces of lavender. And oh my gosh, this actually makes me really happy. Sometimes things are hard, right? This hasn't been the easiest month for any of us for so many reasons. And so now I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon. And there you have it, guys. So what happens here is you can leave this out at room temperature and gradually it will start to cool off. Or you can throw it in the fridge. Sometimes it cracks a bit, and I'm no chocolatier by any measure, but I do like to just kind of show you what we've got. And now I'll probably put it in our little, we have a little like beverage fridge that's easy to use. And I'll put some pictures on my timeline a little bit later today. So circle back to take a look. So any questions about the chocolate bark? Anybody have some fun ideas of flavors? Put them in the chat box. I'd love to hear where your creativity is taking you. So these are two of the things. And then we also mentioned dried fruit tea is another great gift, and dried fruit itself. And then I love to do spice blends. So we'll talk about that in one of the coming weeks. So you can really make these fun little boxes, goodie boxes. And I wanted to just segue here for a minute to just talk a little bit about the upcoming Thanksgiving course. We'll take a little bit of a look at it while I'm talking and everything's sort of settling, and then I'll pull the kale chips out to show you. But the Thanksgiving course is sort of like a experiential process where we can come together and create a little more connection. Yeah, and you could come for a nibble, you can come for the whole meal, but basically it's an opportunity. You'll get an ebook of recipes, a timeline of how to make it a little bit easier in the kitchen. And if you have any questions, you can just sort of throw them in the chat box for me. There'll be live recorded classes that'll be available to rewatch at your leisure. There'll be a Facebook group. We have some guests coming that are going to do mindfulness, mindful eating exercise, as well as some crafternoon kind of elements. So I'm really excited to share that week with you. It'll start a week from this Sunday. And there's still a bit of an early bird discount for registering, and that link is on the website at the top on the banner there, so you can see that here. So check out the website, and I'll put the link here in the chat box. And let's take a look and see how those kale chips are doing. And again, if you have any questions about that, let me know. So the chocolate chip brand that I used, I see a question here, is this one right here, and this is a 63% cacao. It's a dark chocolate, and it does have, the ingredients in it are basically vegan, but it's processed on equipment that has dairy. So again, if you had a true milk allergy, this wouldn't be ideal, but these are the ones that I kind of like. But you can experiment based on reading the label and finding ones that you have in your home. These are non-GMO. There are some organic chocolate totally vegan, like processed in completely vegan facility, which you may want to check out. I think Sprouts has that, maybe Trader Joe's, not positive. So let's see what's happening with those kale chips. All right, and we are not quite done on those guys, so let me I didn't get the drawer totally closed on the kale chips, but let's see here. I may have some that I've already made, and I can show you what they're going to look like when they're done. So give me one sec for that. All right, so I'm just going to pull these guys out, and well, it's mostly just crumbs. So at any rate, you can circle back towards the end of the day. I'll get some photos up for everybody that shows the chocolate bark all done, as well as the kale chips all done. And I always appreciate everyone joining in. Go ahead and share this with a friend if you think they might enjoy learning about making some homemade holiday gifts this year. You can also join me in my Facebook group where we're doing some cooking. And I'm really excited to kind of share these little treasures with you. These are great ways to sort of get kids in the kitchen, have families do activities together. And as I say this week, it's really all about getting in the kitchen and playing with your food. I find that to be remarkably therapeutic. And I think we're all sort of in a time of transition, holding our breath still just a little bit. So I hope everybody has a wonderful week and look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, this has been Dr. Siri Chand. I'm your joyful plant-based foodie and physician. So have a great week, everybody.